supposed to get delivery of
Well, it's pretty good.
but maybe we can get
Really? Gee, aren't they efficient?
yeah, Sam.
Did we use the thing? John?
Thank
John
you.
what? Oh, he's not John Galt?
John Galt is a fictional character.
Yeah, we're waiting for that guy to surface for real, man. I'm waiting.
Folks, thank you for your patience. Our chair delivery didn't show up this evening, so we're running next door for a few more. We're going to get started in just a moment. We're really glad y'all came out to join us this evening. We'll get started in just a moment.
It's 6:05, but with the chair situation, we should wait. There's people running over to Marcus.
Yes,
Marcus,
we're bringing all the chairs over from his office, so there'll be plenty. All right. Save that chair.
Those guys aren't getting it done, and they have no training. They work for the, let me tell you, I don't have any business. You know, I have kids. I didn't know. Your 40s people? So that's why you take that. I like your kids for another.
There's yes.
There's a no on yes.
I'm gonna shut the door. Should we leave it?
AC.
The door! Yes, shut it. Okay, perfect. It's stuck in here, we can always open it up. Okay, great. Well, thank you all so much for coming. This is the Proposition S Town Hall meeting. My name is Rachel Skoma, and I'll be your moderator. A little bit of my background. I'm the Executive Director of Canvas for a Cause, one of the sponsoring organizations on the Yes on S campaign. I'm also an attorney, and I'm also the treasurer. So I have a large involvement in this in Proposition S. We invited the opposition. They declined our invitation. However, we hope to give you all of the information that you have, and please ask as many questions as you want, which we will get to in a moment. I'm going to introduce our panelists first. We have
Excuse me for interruption. Do you guys order some chairs?
Actually, it's too late.
Too late?
Yeah, tell them.
Alright.
Thank you.
well, better late than never. Unfortunately, we already have all the chairs we need. That's awesome. Okay, so first we have Vay Linville. Vay has been working on this campaign from the beginning. We have Holly Hellerstedt. We have Marcus Boyd, and we have Eugene Davidovich, all of whom support Measure S. Again, the opposition is not here. However, I'm sure that we can answer everyone's questions to the best of our ability. I'm going to start off with the first question. Each person is going to have a minute to answer, and then we're going to open it up to all of you. So you can all ask your questions. Basically, I'll take stacks, so raise your hand, and I will take your name down, and then I will call on you once the other person is finished. Each person will also receive a minute to respond to your questions, or they can pass, depending on what they have to contribute to that question. Okay, first, so I'll start with Vay. Why do you support or oppose Proposition S?
All right. My name is Vay Linville. I drink cannabis medicines to breathe. They referred me to UCSD for double lung transplant. I decided I didn't want to do that. I went out and joined one of these clubs, and following an 1800s recipe from Eli Lilly, I drank a great deal of this medicine for about 10 weeks and knew that I was better. Now I use small amounts, put drops in my tea every day, and it lets me breathe. Very simply, the medicine lasts me about 5.5 hours. When I get up in the morning, I gurgle like an aquarium until I'm able to have a cup of tea and get back to normal. Without the medicine, it would be a matter of days before I got pneumonia and got worse from there. This medicine allows me to continue to survive many years past any realistic expectation I had from my doctors. My family's been here in Imperial Beach for a long, long time. My parents met on Palm Avenue during World War II. I don't like it when the mayor calls me a carpetbagger. I belong here. And I think that patients have the reasonable right to choose the legal medicine that works best for them. And there has to be some place for us to get it. It makes a lot more sense to me to have it in the plain light of day on Palm Avenue where we can all keep an eye on it than down in the park where we all know it is.
Thank you. And sorry, panelists, we're going to do it 1 minute. So when I snap, that means your time is coming to an end. I know you were perfect. You were right on the button. So
Awesome. Hello everyone, my name is Holly. I work at Cannabis for a Cause. We are a LGBTQ rights nonprofit. And a big reason why we've always strived to fight for patients' rights for medical cannabis is actually 60% of HIV/AIDS patients actually self-identify as medical cannabis users. So this is one of the few ways that they can find relief not only from their symptoms from the HIV/AIDS virus, but also the harmful side effects of their pharmaceuticals. So you may not know, but it can cause things like wasting syndrome, which basically is them feeling extreme pain at the end of their nerves and can absolutely lose their appetite and not want to eat at all. That's why you see a lot of people get really thin when they've caught the virus. And I have a lot of friends who are in the HIV/AIDS community, and I think it's really important, as Faye said, for people to be able to go to a safe place for the medicine of their choice and not have to go out on a street corner, call someone who they don't know, go somewhere sketchy, to be quite honest, to find medicine that is prescribed by a doctor and that is legal in our state and has been since 1996. Additionally, I think that it's an interesting thing to want to take away dispensaries when there are many pharmaceutical drugs, but unfortunately I know a lot of the concern is about abuse. And there are many pharmaceutical drugs that also can be abused, but we don't see those being taken away. We still want to provide those for patients. We don't want to push them onto the streets to find healthy medicine. And I'm a strong, firm believer that it's a waste of our time to put people who maybe had a tiny bit of cannabis into prison for years and years and years of their life, which will no doubtedly affect them moving forward. So, thank you. That's why I'm here.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. It's been a difficult 4 years for me. My name is Marcus Boyd. I am the person that brought medical marijuana to the attention of the City Council as a need for patients that weren't able to access medical marijuana. It's been a very cynical route that has been taken recently, but in the beginning it wasn't so. The council had talked to their neighbors, and they knew of the older people that used it for their arthritis, and they knew of the other patients that used it for their MS or their other reasons that they used it. But then they knew that 1 or 2 or 5 people that they didn't think looked sick were getting it, and their sole purpose for then keeping it hidden from the people that really need it has become, they've decided to step really in between a patient and their doctor. where that sounds okay to a lot of people because of the terminology of a hot shot and these images of runaway access to or normalizing something that most people or a lot of people had been afraid of so long. And then what ramifications that would be on children. During the process of the moratorium, the council looked at a lot of information. And in the information that they looked at, they refused to look at the medical benefits or the patients, and they solely looked at who they thought was getting it, and as it turned out, it wasn't. You haven't been provided percentages from the opposition, and that is really sad because the opposition includes the sheriff, and the sheriff has raided in the several dozen locations. They know all the client records. They have the dates of births of every single person, the record that they have taken. They haven't released that information in percentages to you because the percentages equal the percentages of the population. If there are 24% of the dispensary patients that are between the age of 18 and 24, then as it turns out, they look at the area around that dispensary and it turned out that that's how many 18 to 24-year-olds are in that population. The same percentages went up all the way to 90-year-olds. So I'm going to stop now, but the information that you've been given is lacking any historical information.
Welcome. For those of you who have just joined us, we have 4 panelists up here, and they're asking the question or answering the question why they support or oppose Proposition S. And next up, do we need more chairs? Because I can give up mine.
You guys, can you talk a little bit louder when you're up there? Marcus and Eugene, Marcus and Eugene, when you're up there, talk a little bit louder with the AC. It's a little hard to hear you.
Thank you, and thank you so much for being here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. My name is Eugene Davidovich. I am the campaign manager for the Yes on Us campaign. I also serve as the chapter coordinator for the San Diego chapter of Americans for Safe Access. And I also proudly sit on the board of directors of Canvas for a Cause, which is one of the sponsoring organizations of the proposition down here in Imperial Beach as well. I am a Navy veteran. I grew up here in San Diego County, not in Imperial Beach, although I do live here now. I am also very proud of my involvement in the medical cannabis fight over the last 4 years. After being honorably discharged from the United States Navy, I worked in the IT field for many years as a business consultant. One of the things that I took away from the Navy with me, aside from the amazing experience, is some seriously debilitating conditions. I am a medical cannabis patient as well. I use it daily. I have a master's degree in business. I have a bachelor's degree in business as well. I'm a very productive member of our society, and I get a lot done. The reason I support Proposition S is because in 1996, the voters of the state of California passed Proposition S. In IB, it passed with 56.7%. That's in 1996. In 2004, the California State Legislature passed Senate Bill 420, which further clarified Proposition 215 and expanded on the need for patients to have safe and local access to a medicine that has been recommended to them by their doctor. In 2008, the California Attorney General, who's currently our governor, that was Attorney General Brown at the time, issued guidelines for the non-diversion of medical marijuana and outline what a collective is, what a cooperative is, how are patients to get their medicine, et cetera, et cetera. And in the city of Imperial Beach, there are not just hundreds, but thousands of patients, of folks who support the use of medical cannabis. There are hundreds and hundreds of patients here who use medical cannabis and should not have to leave their neighborhood or go to the black market to search for their medicine. They need a safe, reliable, local, sensible solution to medical marijuana, not an outright ban. We are trying to stop the ban. It is a ban, and we're trying to stop it. We want to repeal it, and we want to replace it with strict, sensible, and reasonable regulations for medical cannabis. And that is why I support Carlos.
Thank you so much. Okay, great. So now that the panelists have said why they support Proposition S, I'm going to turn the time over to you all to ask them questions. So this is how this proposition relates to your community, what kind of effect it will have, any kind of question that you have. Please ask it now. Each panelist will have the opportunity to spend a minute answering your question. They also have the opportunity to pass, and in that way we'll try to keep time and definitely be out of here by 7:30.
Yes, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a medical person, so I can't speak to the medical aspects of this, but I can speak to the initiative itself, because I have a copy of it in my hand. It appears to me that the voters passed a proposition, the Senate passed implementing legislation, and the Attorney General issued guidelines. Through that process, the city tried to regulate this the distribution process that we're talking about. And now, in the initiative itself, it appears that what you folks want to do is to take the city guidelines, the city regulations, the city ordinances, and basically just erase them and go back to what the state said. When you go down the line, the only thing the state really said was what the Attorney General said, which is, here are the guidelines, okay? Cities, you work with these guidelines as best you can. So in reading this in its entirety, it appears to me like what you're saying is, we don't like what the city of Imperial Beach has done with either their laws or their regulations. We want to go to the state. The state doesn't have any guidelines. The state doesn't have any regulations. So it appears to me that you folks are in the situation that a child would be that wants to visit his friend, and he says, Mom, can I visit my friend? She says, talk to your dad. Dad, can I visit my friend? He says, talk to your mom. So the kid goes. Nobody said no. It appears to me the way you're looking at is to put together a situation in this city where no one can say no to you. You cannot be regulated, nothing can be confiscated, no arrest can be made except pursuant to state law, which there is none. There are only guidelines. So how do any of you, but especially you, since you're an attorney, respond to this?
I'm just a moderator, but I would be happy to talk to people afterwards. But I'm going to give the chance to the panelists first,
Okay.
but thank you.
It sounds to me like you want a free ride.
I think it's
Let's, since we started with
With
Vay,
no regulation, no
Perfect.
regulation. In other words, let me start a shop every 300 feet on Palm Avenue and one every 300 feet on Ivy Boulevard. Let's have some competition. Let's all get loaded and make a lot of money.
great. So we're going to start with Eugene since we started with Vay on the
Oh,
first
I'm
question.
sorry.
So let's go in reverse order. You have a minute each.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, very much for the question as well as your concerns. They're very valid. In fact, I think what I would like to do is clarify just a little bit about the going sort of, what you mentioned about going to the state or whatnot. We're actually not asking to go to state law on this issue. In fact, we have outlined specific zoning and operational requirements in this ordinance that clarify the conditions under which medical cannabis collectives and cooperatives can operate in the city of Imperial Beach. What you mentioned as far as not being able to be punished or held accountable or irrevocable, or I heard a few key words in there, so I'd like to address that real fast as well. The law that you talked of has been codified into the Health and Safety Code. So Prop 215, the Senate Bill 420, all that legislation, it's been written into law, which is known as our Health and Safety Codes. And those health and safety codes, if any of them are violated, that is punishable as whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony or many other things. And we have a very active marijuana eradication project here in San Diego through the Narcotic Task Force, through our Sheriff's Department. They are actively seeking out anybody who is in violation of those health and safety codes and holding them accountable. In fact, there's cases going on every day in court. Some win, some cases are lost, but the act of enforcing the law is something that goes on a regular basis. The city failed in their attempt to regulate. They made an attempt. You're right, we don't like it. It's not that the way they made it, we don't like. What they did is unconstitutional and against state law.
What is it they did you don't like?
The outright prohibition of collectives or cooperatives is simply unconstitutional. Collectives and cooperatives and patients' ability to cultivate that medicine, distribute it amongst themselves, operate as nonprofit, and ensure that those who are qualified get the access that they need is something that was voted into law by the voters of the state of California. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of cities throughout the state who've gone as far as we're going here and have outlined more restrictions and more guidelines that folks who want to collectively or cooperatively cultivate have to follow. And so that's what this is. In fact, it's 19 additional just operational requirements, not to mention the zoning requirements. So the statement of there is no regulations, it's just not accurate. If you actually look at the ordinance, it's a lot of regulations.
Who's responsible for watching those regulations?
I'm so sorry. So we're going to go through all the panelists so that they have a chance to answer. Oh no, that's great. I definitely want participation. You can have a chance to ask it once we move on. I'm also going to ask you all a question. I have it so that each person speaks for a minute. Would you like that so that there's like time limits, or just let them finish their response?
No,
and
they'll
go
never
on?
stop.
Okay, perfect. Okay, Marcus, take it away.
What I'm saying is, I limited my questions for a minute. You're supposed to be the timekeeper here. None of these people spoke for a minute. They all spoke for 2, 3, 4 minutes. Okay? So be fair.
So I'm going to snap, and that's basically like wrap it up. So even if you were to go over a minute, I would never cut you off.
Because I have a response to what he said, and I don't have an opportunity to say anything.
Go ahead.
Yeah, what is your response? I think, well,
It's okay, let him.
yeah, I totally agree.
Go ahead.
My response is, what happens in these Senate bills you're talking about gives cities the option to make rules, regulations, and write their own ordinances. What the city has done here is to write some ordinances that you don't like. Because you say there's a complete ban on this, or can this gentleman here give us medical marijuana in this city?
So you
Or
know,
is it completely
sorry.
banned?
May I respond in 30 seconds?
I would rather if other people wanted to respond first, so we could get other people
As it
panelists.
stands now, can you get your medical marijuana in Vero Beach?
No.
You can't. And why is that?
There is nowhere for me to legally purchase it in Imperial Beach. In addition, well, I'll wait for my turn,
Oh, please, you can finish.
Go ahead, man.
okay? And I'll try and make this snappy. But we tried desperately to work with the city council over the last 2 years to implement regulations that would work for everyone. We did the same thing in San Diego. San Diego frittered away 2 years with a medical marijuana task force that put forth wonderful suggestions which the city council ignored. They passed a law which the people had to overturn because it was unsupported by the community. Here, Imperial Beach City Council has done the same. They've implemented a ban that was unsupported by the community. Prop S easily, in days, gathered enough signatures from the residents of Imperial Beach to put this on the ballot because a lot of people find what the city council did highly questionable. And in addition to the state laws, the state guidelines, only last week the appellate court handed down further clarification on exactly what does and does not constitute a legal collective in the state of California. It should not be up to the city council whether or not I can get my medicine.
So you're saying that these Senate bills that were passed don't give the cities this power?
Another court has also recently held that, and the California, I believe the California Appellate Court, correct me if I'm wrong, has recently held that cities do not have the right to ban collectives. That was the Long Beach decision, yes?
Cities have the right to regulate, sir, you're absolutely right, but cities do not have the right to outright prohibit patients from collectively associating or putting arbitrary caps, such as if there's 4 patients doing it, then you're considered a large-scale dispensary, and that's the current law.
Awesome.
The
Marcus,
state law
did
does
you
not
have,
allow
I'm
that.
so sorry, I just want to give everyone a chance to speak. That's the purpose of having 4 panelists. So Marcus, did you have
Thank
a
you, yes.
response? Sorry, Holly, and then you can next.
Your argument really does sound valid, except that you keep asking, can't people just grow their own? I have to ask you, sir, what if you cannot grow your own? Their current ban says that what their current ban says is very limited people that have the ability to grow a plant, nurture it for the length of time that it needs to be indoors, without getting any bugs and all the things all the things that happen, without using any pesticides, and knowing how to cultivate a usable medical product as an amateur sick person. That is ludicrous to do. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for you to go over to CVS and say, you've got to go mush up some aspirin, they've got to push it together for you in order for you to use it. None of that makes sense.
Well, Marcus, not once has
Let me
he said
finish.
anything about growing. He has not said
Right,
one word.
their ban says you
Their ban,
must,
yes.
3 or less, must cultivate inside any residence. You cannot get a business license, I've tried, which means you cannot rent a commercial location. One last thing, this gentleman doesn't use marijuana that's in a bud. He uses the amount of marijuana in a bud would take pounds for him to live. What he uses is keef. It's the stuff outside the marijuana. It's highly concentrated. The only way he can get it is through a network of larger collectives that shake this stuff together and put it in a huge jar that he can turn into a liquid in that much of a form that's going to last him about a month. All of that, just a little bit of form, takes pounds. And the ban that you have right now doesn't let a 3-person collective grow enough for him to live.
Thank you, Holly.
Sweet, so I'll be really quick since I know that a lot of people have questions. I just want to say in terms of why we're calling it a ban, is because like they said, 3 or more people is considered a large-scale dispensary and therefore illegal. And the problem is, I've heard arguments, if you're a patient, why don't you have your caretaker do it? Well, of course, if you're in a place like an apartment, obviously you don't really have money a lot of times, especially with other medications you may need to have inside growing equipment, anything like this. In addition, even if you're able to grow it, to be able to have a stable supply of what is considered your medicine, just like you have like daily little pill tablets or something, that's not available if there's not a larger resource that you can get your medicine from. So really what we're asking here is actually a stable place to get this, to know that they can have their medicine, not have it be a bet. And I see this as an organic farmer. I have tomatoes, squash, all sorts of things in my backyard. It's not easy. I've killed a lot of plants, and it would suck if my medicine depended on like when I'm able to be home and take care of it, and if I don't, I'm screwed and I don't get my medicine. So that's why we call it a ban. And yes, the city did implement these regulations, but the regulations constitute as a ban. And what they're talking about is a California Supreme Court case decided in August of this year that prohibits municipalities from using to ban dispensaries, and that includes not allowing patients to reach their medicine, like this does.
More arbitrary numbers.
Wonderful. So was your question answered? Do you want to ask a follow-up question, or should we move on and then you
just
can get back
bottom
on
line, it
staff?
sounds to me like what has happened is that the state has implemented laws and regulations that tend to be more in the private area rather than commercial. And basically, you want to overturn that and turn.
So let's get to that at the
into
end once we've
large-scale
heard
commercial
from other
operation.
people. So yes, you had your
Well, the
question
law
up
that you're
before.
referring to, though, is the
Marcus, we're gonna move on because we want to make sure everyone has a chance, but
Can I say
definitely
something?
let's get back to him later.
The thing is, we still have the same city regulations as every other business in this city that we're trying to set up. It's not easy to get a business open in this town. These are just extra regulations. The thing about the lights and the security and they have extra regulations, but people can't like gather outside or something about hanging out too much.
I read the operational regulations. It just seems to me that I came in there not knowing basically what the city has done, and you kind of filled me in as to what the city has done, so I think my question's been answered.
Wonderful, thank you
The
so much.
city did
And I
it.
think, sorry, this is
Let
for,
me just tell him, the
no,
city-
actually, this is for
Okay.
panels, I'm sorry, we
All
just
right.
have to move on, so you in the back.
What I wanted to ask, kind of with Ken, is who is gonna be responsible for regulating? Let's say that this passes and we are allowed to have these shops, NIB. Who is gonna be responsible to make sure that these shops are following the rules and regulations and so that everything's legit?
Marcus, let's start with you.
The city. What we didn't put in the ordinance is any prohibition from the city making sure all 19 of these operational requirements are fulfilled. We also didn't tell them how much to charge for a business license to make sure all these operational requirements are fulfilled. We also didn't tell them how to make sure they're all fulfilled. We didn't tell them that they couldn't either. They're free to do that,
So you're leaving it to the city to follow the guidelines?
to finish the job, yes.
Now, if the city's having issues and they're the ones that put this ban on, what's gonna turn them around to say, yes, now that the people have voted, suddenly they're gonna have a change of heart and they're gonna follow it?
No, I don't have it.
Sweet. I just want to say, so the city obviously already is paying attention to this. That's why they put in something like the current regulations that they have. So it's pretty obvious to me, especially given there's been a lot of talk in this community. I've been out here walking out. I know a lot of people have heard of the proposition. They know that this is going on. They know that they're going to have to regulate these. They're going to have to approve business licenses for anything to open. So it's not like they can't be aware of it. It's instantly something that they have to approve and check in for them to even get a business license. Additionally, there are local federal agents here in San Diego, U.S. attorneys, who would happily come and help them out if there was someone out of regulation.
And Marcus, you had 20 more seconds, so
Oh, I'm
if you
sorry.
wanted to.
I'm sorry, if that didn't answer your question, could you ask it one more time?
I was just wanting to make sure that there are going to be regulations that will be followed and checked, that if these stores open, that it's not like, well, now that the ballot is passed, now they can just do what they wanna do, is somebody gonna
I
follow
got
up?
it, and I do have an answer to that. The answer is simple. Prop S, we've asked for a location using all types of city locations just to have this town hall meeting. The city went through every length they could to not allow us to have this town hall meeting. So we had it at a very generous location called the Legacy Center. The city goes way out of their way about Prop S. So once it's law, they're gonna do everything they can to prevent this or at least regulate it to the bone. Trust me.
That's not, yeah, that's kind of the city's problem too.
Their
Is that
Stop
everyone
Hot
is
Shops
so
isn't
crazy.
gonna end November 7th when we win. On November 7th, they're gonna open this law up, and they're gonna, to be honest with you, they already have. They already know exactly how they're gonna regulate it, what officers they're gonna put on it, and they're not telling you how much it's gonna cost, because it really fits within the budget.
Great, okay.
That really is a good question. And the whole point to this law, and in case anybody was unclear, this law would repeal the existing ordinance and replace it with this law that we have written. In case anybody was unclear on that, it would replace the existing ordinance. Now, enforcement depends on what kind of crime has been committed. But the whole point to us writing this law in the first place is that we want there to be regulations. We believe that sensible regulations protect communities. Now, we would hope that if a violation was of a zoning nature and somebody's lighting was insufficient, that they would come by and write them a ticket rather than having the DEA come and kick the doors in like happened last week with a machine gun to a grandmother's neck not far from here in a collective that I'm a member of. We would hope that they would handle an issue like that in an appropriate way. Of course, we'll have to wait to see. If anybody was
She's worried
doing
about-
something of a more serious nature, I think we all would hope that the enforcement would be immediate and appropriate.
Absolutely.
But we would hope that the enforcement be appropriate there's been some real bad things go on, and when people come into my neighborhood in masks from the federal government, you don't have to be Jewish to be afraid.
Eugene? Hey, can I say something? She's actually referring to like kids getting weed. We know what you're referring to. Right? But you see where they're coming from.
Just
So-
for my own, I can tell you that before they were all closed, I have been inside the great majority of the 200 and something collectives that were open in San Diego myself. No one's ever even been accused of selling something to somebody that didn't have a recommendation and was a minor, much less convicted of it. It's what the prohibitionists always say, but with everything you have to go through to try and come into compliance and open a place, it's just not happening. But if I ever saw it happen, I'd call the police myself.
Eugene.
Thank you. Ma'am, I think that is an excellent question. I also want to know, how is it that these 19 operational requirements, or the zoning, or as the gentleman mentioned earlier, the state law itself, how is that going to be enforced? Well, I'd like to answer that question with specifics. If someone isn't paying their taxes, the Board of Equalization is going to come down on them. That is a regulatory agency that fortunately we already have in the state. We're not going to set up another regulatory agency here in IB just to make sure that people in IB pay their taxes. Right? We've got one in the state. We don't need more bureaucracy or red tape. If they are violating the zoning requirements for any one, just in any one of these 19 operational requirements, that falls directly on the folks that are in our code compliance office right here in the city. If somebody doesn't do their electrical wiring right, or doesn't do whatever other operational requirements are supposed to be done, that's code, that's zoning. We are not going to set up more bureaucracy or more red tape or a fourth or a fifth agency that's going to oversee that. Code is doing an amazing job of that work. Some would disagree, but code is already doing that job, is the point. If there is a violation of the health and safety codes, as in, like they mentioned earlier, no one has ever been accused of such a thing, but if such a thing were to happen, where medicine is diverted for non-medical purposes, the sheriff will handle that. The police will handle that. I don't want code compliance going there and handling those issues. I don't want the tax folks going in there and handling those issues. The cops need to. That's their job. If people are breaking criminal laws, then they should be held accountable. If they are in violation of their nonprofit status, or whatever other incorporation form that they took with the state of California, we've got the Secretary of State, folks, to scrutinize, to look at it, to ensure that they are properly incorporated as a, whether it's a nonprofit mutual benefit or whatever other nonprofit category they may choose to take. They have to be a nonprofit. So if that's violated, then it's that agency. We already have so many regulatory agencies, and this law fits it right into the current structure that how businesses operate in the state of California already.
And we watch them like a hawk. If we hear, it's like it's a small town.
Great.
Hear somebody selling weed to kids, we close them down.
Oh, if I may add just one more point, just real quick, and the way that those complaints are lodged is the same way as they are done today. If there is a business in violation of a code issue, it's a neighborhood complaint, anybody can make it in the office, the city is required to investigate and take action. If somebody is in violation of a criminal complaint, they make a report to the sheriff or the law enforcement, they investigate and they take care of it. We already have the infrastructure to enforce the laws that govern our state.
My last question then would be, is there a limit to how many shops you're gonna allow in IB? Your question too?
Sir, actually, you were next in the green shirt. Is it okay if she asks a second follow-up question? Wonderful. So Holly is the first, and you have a minute.
Oh, jeez. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna pass on this
She
one.
didn't write.
I wanna address something else that hasn't been brought up yet, but I'll just wait.
You have a closing statement
Okay.
at the end for a minute and a half, so take down those notes. So then, in the way that we're going,
There's not enough questions, actually.
we're going to answer it, but
Let's look
Holly
at
skipped,
it.
so now it's Vay's turn, and then we're going
Sure.
on. So everyone has a minute to answer
Okay,
the question.
and the question is, how many can there be? Excuse me, I'm gonna stand up. The question is, how many can there be in Imperial Beach? And the answer is, we really hope that there's gonna be at least one. Now, the
The answer
city,
is there can be one every 300 feet.
Well, I,
if,
Every
hey,
300
you're not
feet.
yelling,
So
you're
that's
just
not-
standing up so we can hear
That's not
you.
true.
I really wanna hear what Vay has to say.
That's not what it
Sir?
says.
Exactly what it
All right,
says.
Vay has the floor now for 30 more
Exactly
seconds.
what it says.
I will give you every possible respect. I would really appreciate it if I could have my 1 minute uninterrupted.
I'll shut my mouth.
there could be, within the permissible zones, which is not everywhere by any stretch of the imagination, if every single parcel were vacant and every single landlord was willing to rent to someone and someone wanted to rent every single parcel, according to the law, hypothetically, I suppose that might be the case. But it really is a very unrealistic way to analyze the situation. Yes, it is true, within the permitted areas, if someone were able to come in and successfully rent and keep open every single one, well then I guess property values and rental values would be somewhat better in Imperial Beach than they were before Proposition S. Because right now, some of those properties we can't seem to rent out to anybody. I don't think there'll be anywhere near as many as you seem to do. I'm hoping when all is said and done that we might end up with 2 or 3.
The law provides that there can be.
The law provides that there could be. Yes, it does. It also does not restrict how many pharmacies might open in Imperial Beach or how many florists might open in Imperial Beach. And I'd be happy to give you equal time, but I'd really like to say, and I'm not a criminal. I will not be treated as a criminal. My family came here in 1684. We've been in every war, battle, and pumpkin doings this nation's put on. My family came down the California Trail in a wagon. I belong here, and I am not a criminal. I will not be treated like a criminal because I chose to survive. It's inappropriate. I'm an American too. And I respect your right to disagree with me, but the idea that there's going to be this incredible proliferation really does not stand rational examination.
Thank you so much, Dave. Eugene has it for a minute.
I don't know if I can follow that, because that was a really a compelling statement. The truth is, folks, that in Imperial Beach we're going to have maybe 2, maybe 3 licensed, regulated collectors. We're not going to have one every 300 feet. It's physically impossible to put that many in the city. And the ordinance, what it says is that, as state law currently requires, every collective or cooperative anywhere in the state of California has to be 600 feet away from a school. Now that doesn't mean you stand in front of a school and walk a straight line and there's your 600 feet. That's not how property line to property line distance measurements work. It's the line of where the property ends to the line of where the property begins, and oftentimes that means thousands of feet apart. Now, there is nothing in the law that says that additional arbitrary requirements are necessary. There's nothing in evidence to support that a dispensary that's located 600 feet away from a park in any way increases or hurts the park, or a bus stop, or whatever other things we can come up with as a sensitive use. The reality is that state law requires them to be 600 feet away from school. If they meet all of these requirements, nonprofit operation, the 19 strict operational requirements, and everything else, I would be proud to have them next to a park, because the folks visiting the park wouldn't even know they're there. They would be so safe. It would be a staple of the community. Folks, take a look at the location on 16th Street. There used to be a dispensary right there just a few months ago. It was not regulated. It wasn't licensed. They had no business license. When that dispensary was in operation, they had a security guard out front. That corner looked great. That corner was being revitalized. There was neighboring businesses